From the Cronkite Studios in downtown Phoenix, this is Cronkite News.
Another week of a Supreme Court showdown over the Brett Kavanaugh nomination. As new allegations surface, protesters head to the Capitol.
Plus, how a proposed federal rule may keep some immigrants from becoming permanent residents and ultimately gaining citizenship.
And a funding battle for maintenance at the Grand Canyon and the infrastructure that supports this Arizona treasure.
Cronkite News starts now.
Good evening and welcome to Cronkite News on Arizona PBS. I'm Jake Trybulski.
And I'm Ashley Mackey. Thank you for joining us.
Supreme Court nominee Brett Kavanaugh calls the latest accusations against him an obvious character assassination. That's after Yale classmate Deborah Ramirez came forward to The New Yorker with allegations of sexual misconduct that took place when Kavanaugh was in college. Kavanaugh has flatly denied allegations from both women who have accused him. Some members of the Senate are urging a final vote on his nomination this Thursday. Today, President Donald Trump says he is standing by Kavanaugh.
He's a fine man with an unblemished past, and these are highly unsubstantiated statements from people represented by lawyers. You should look into the lawyers doing the representation. Judge Kavanaugh is an outstanding person, and I am with him all the way. We'll see how it goes with the Senate. We'll see how it goes with the vote.
During the upcoming hearing, the Senate Judiciary Committee will hear a testimony from his first accuser, Christine Blasey Ford. That committee is expected to vote following the hearing.
Meanwhile, protesters targeted Senate offices, including the office of Arizona Senator Jeff Flake, calling for a no vote on Kavanaugh's nomination. Reporter Charlene Santiago has the story from our Washington bureau.
As new allegations rise, protesters made their way to senators' offices here in Washington to make their voices heard. The protesters came from across the country and crowded the hallways of Senate office buildings to demand a no vote on Kavanaugh's nomination. These allegations are personal to some of the protesters, including for a veteran who traveled all the way from Georgia to voice her concerns.
There's a lot of women that suffer in the military, that suffer from military sexual trauma, and some feel like they don't have a voice, and I want to be that voice. The protest began with rallies outside the offices of selected senators, including Republican Susan Collins of Maine and Jeff Flake of Arizona, who is a member of the Judiciary Committee that will vote on Kavanaugh. He can potentially, make history here, as well as be a voice for women. Protesters ended in the Russell Building Rotunda, where Capitol police officers escorted them out in cuffs, and the department has not said how many people were arrested today. In a letter to the committee, Kavanaugh today called the allegations against him, quote, smears, pure and simple, and said he looks forward to testifying. But some today said they opposed the Kavanaugh nomination before the sexual allegations were leveled.
Regardless of party, I think it's really important that we defend the Constitution and that we stand up for the rule of law. Especially in James,
who said she was a victim of sexual misconduct in the military, believes the hearing should be postponed until further action is taken on behalf of the woman's allegations.
I think that we should believe women and do something about it. So not just thoughts and prayers, not just believing women, but actually invoking laws that's going to help women.
As of now, Kavanaugh is expected to testify on Thursday, and some protesters have said that they will be here throughout the week. In Washington, Charlene Santiago, Cronkite News.
We reached out to Senator Flake's office for comment on the protests, but have not yet received a response.
Deputy Attorney General Rod Rosenstein will meet with President Trump on Thursday to discuss the fate of his employment. The two will address a New York Times report that claimed Rosenstein planned on invoking the 25th Amendment to remove Trump from office. Rosenstein denies the claims in the article. The announcement comes today, just hours after Rosenstein said he would consider resigning. A White House source says Rosenstein expects to be fired during Thursday's meeting.
This morning, Republican Senate candidate Martha McSally visited the Refrigeration School Incorporated for a roundtable discussion on skilled laborers in the workforce. McSally was joined by instructors, students, and executives to discuss the state of trade jobs in our economy. She agrees that trade jobs are important and took note to the fact that they are not as popular as they once were. McSally took a look around the Refrigeration School Incorporated to learn how everything works and what some of the students are up to.
As we're out and about in the community, I'm hearing often the challenges we're having with such a good economy is qualified skilled workers, and especially in the trades. So this is really important. It's great for me to be here today to kind of see what y'all are doing, to hear what your issues are.
McSally has recently declined a debate with opponent Kristen Sinema on Arizona PBS due to a scheduling conflict of the CNN debate airing the same night. But Sinema had not agreed to the CNN debate either.
The first of two debates in the Arizona governor's race takes place tonight on Arizona PBS. Incumbent Republican Doug Ducey, Democratic candidate David Garcia, and Green Party candidate Angel Torres will also debate tomorrow in Tucson. The major issues in this campaign have been immigration and education. Ducey is pushing for increased security along Arizona's southern border to aid in stopping the drug trafficking and illegal immigration into the U.S., while Garcia is focusing on improving Arizona's public education system. Tune in for the debate tonight at 5 on Arizona PBS. Tomorrow is National Voter Registration Day. Many Americans aren't able to vote each year because they missed the deadline, forget to update their registration, or don't know how to register. Tomorrow, volunteers and organizations will be on the streets in efforts to make sure more people are aware of voter registration.
Immigrants who use public assistance could find it harder to obtain a green card under new rules being proposed by the Trump administration, potentially affecting millions of families who use public federal programs like food stamps, Medicaid, and public housing. Cronkite News reporter Abdel Jimenez tells us more about this public charge policy and who could be affected.
They are basically increasing the definition of public charge, and those that are going to be most affected are those immigrant families who live under the poverty guideline.
Reaction to the Trump administration's public charge announcement over the weekend has been swift in Phoenix. Lucha, a pro-immigrant advocacy group, says the latest move by the Department of Homeland Security is just a scare tactic for people trying to get permanent residency.
But in reality, it's very specific to folks who are trying to apply for residency. So this is not specifically for folks who are already residents. This is for people who are in the process or applying for a U.S. permanent residency.
When contacted, local DHS authorities referred Cronkite News to a press release, which reads in part, quote, "This proposed rule would implement a law passed by Congress intended to promote immigrant self-sufficiency and protect finite resources by ensuring that they are not likely to become burdens on American taxpayers." End quote. Phoenix immigration attorney Rafael Tirado says these proposed new rules could make people shy away from ever attempting to get a green card.
Most clients rely on food stamps, and my clients are basically poor clients. So lots of people are going to need to find probably an affidavit or a sponsor for the applications.
In Phoenix, Abdel Jimenez, Cronkite News.
The administration is expected to formally publish the draft rule today in the Federal Register. That will open a 60-day period for public comment, which the administration will review and potentially revise. The final version will probably come out in a matter of months and will go into effect 60 days after it's published.
Tomorrow, Homeland Security will make an announcement along with police chiefs from Lake Havasu City and Bullhead City regarding sex trafficking. Just today, the FBI released numbers of human trafficking cases for the past year. Jennifer Alvarez is in the broadcast center to break down those numbers.
The FBI released its crime stats this morning. Arizona saw an increase in human trafficking from 2016. In 2017, Arizona had the third highest number of human trafficking cases out of the states that reported data. Texas was the first with more than 300 cases. Minnesota came in second with more than 170 cases, and Arizona had just one shy of 100 cases. Here's how those numbers break down. 92 of the cases were for commercial sex trafficking acts or prostitution. 7 of those cases were for involuntary servitude or slavery. More than 40 of those cases were cleared. Each law enforcement agency is responsible for reporting its crime data directly to the FBI. However, some states don't include this data in their reports, like California. In the broadcast center, Jennifer Alvarez, Cronkite News.
St. Vincent de Paul's dining room has been more than just an area for eating.
Coming up on Cronkite News, what was once an overflow shelter for those who had no place to go at night will no longer be open for those in need.
And how one nonprofit organization is making a difference for the youth of the LGBTQ community.
Join Emmy Award-winning CNN anchor Anderson Cooper as he receives the 2018 Walter Cronkite Award for Excellence in Journalism. Attracting industry leaders from the media, politics, business, and education. The award luncheon is the Cronkite School's signature fundraising event. Tickets for the luncheon ceremony on Wednesday, October 17th at the Sheraton Grand in Phoenix are available for sale at cronkite.asu.edu/luncheon or call 602-496-0482.
I'm Judy Woodruff, anchor and managing editor of the PBS NewsHour. The journalists of tomorrow face a fast-changing media landscape, but quality news remains vitally important to our communities, our country, and our world. At ASU's Walter Cronkite School of Journalism and Mass Communication, students learn solid, reliable reporting, holding the powerful accountable, and rebuilding the public's trust. The Cronkite School and Arizona PBS, preparing the next generation for a stronger future of journalism.
If you're looking for one show that tells you what happened that day in the world of business, it's NBR.
We saw a classic shipwreck.
Nordstrom's opening stores.
Triple-digit gains.
Crude climbs.
We're there to help our audience find new investment ideas.
The market still has room to go up.
Nightly Business Report is the longest-running business television program in history.
Weeknights at 10:30 on Arizona PBS.
Every night, St. Vincent de Paul's dining room floor turns into an overflow shelter for people that have nowhere else to sleep. At the end of this month, the overflow is closing. Reporter Gabriela Becerra tells us what the shelter is doing to help occupants find a more permanent solution.
For the past 2 years, there has been an average of 250 people a night at this overflow shelter. So when they decided to close their doors in April, St. Vincent de Paul took it upon itself to find a place for these occupants to go.
The overflow was pretty good a lot of times, you know.
Gary Hughes used to stay at St. Vincent de Paul's overflow shelter before they announced it was closing back in April.
There's a lot of freedom there because all you had to do is just basically stand outside of where St. Vincent de Paul is, a restaurant there on campus, and then, you know, when the gates open, then you could go on in, and then the mats were already laid out.
The first come, first served shelter has been in constant function for the past 2 years. Now funders are looking for solutions more permanent than mats on a dining room floor.
We didn't have the funding or the community support on our own to keep this kind of Band-Aid going.
Chief Program Officer Jessica BERG says St. Vincent de Paul has been working to find housing and shelters for overflow occupants.
It seemed like the most responsible, humane way to work with a group of folks and also not have 250 people with nowhere to go on October 1st.
BERG says 201 have found housing or alternative shelter options. They're helping 28 remaining people find other options this week. Hughes found a spot at St. Vincent de Paul's Ozanam Manor, a transitional shelter for men and women over 50.
This place does good too here.
The overflow shelter will close on September 30th. The dining hall will not be affected by this closure. In the broadcast center, Gabriela Becerra, Cronkite News.
Every day, the LGBTQ community faces discrimination in the workplace. As Sammy Giebers reports, one nonprofit group called 1 in 10 is hoping to bolster support and opportunities for the youth in the Valley.
Are you looking for like a second job? I'm looking for a second job. Okay.
Employers in the Valley
nice to meet you.
Are meeting LGBT youth.
Try to make it as readable as possible. Got dressed, looked nice, put on our good clean clothes, and went out here to fill out applications.
We're hoping to create a safe space where youth can come in and meet with employers.
Do you have a resume with you?
We are helping to reduce those hurdles and connect to jobs here in the Phoenix area.
There we go.
Another hurdle that faces the LGBTQ community includes homelessness.
In the general population, about 8% of youth are in the LGBT community. But in the youth homeless population, that number is at about 40%.
I was just homeless at like, what,
two weeks ago, not even.
For Richard Wallerman and his partner William Diaz, that statistic hits close to home. They spent more than 2 years on the streets.
Well, the main reason we're on the street is because my family didn't really support the relationship as I'm.
They also face discrimination in the workplace, and Arizona is in the top 10 states with the most LGBTQ discrimination charges, according to insurance quotes.
That's going to change as time goes on.
An event like this is really important because it allows organizations to understand that there are a lot of LGBTQ youth who are super hard workers.
Richard and William managed to get on their feet through the help of counselors like Sarah and organizations like 1 in 10 who hosted the fair.
Worst thing you could do is give up. Stop trying to find a better place, because there are better places.
But their next step is finding that job. In Phoenix, Sammy Giebers, Cronkite News.
A visit from the U.S. Secretary of the Interior highlights a backlog of fixes needed at the Grand Canyon.
Coming up on Cronkite News, from historic cabins to water treatment plants, we take a look at a deferred maintenance at parks here and across the country.
And as we kick off the first week of fall here in the Valley, it's going to be feeling a lot more like summer. I'll let you know how hot it's going to get coming up.
As journalists at Cronkite News, we report on stories that matter to you by focusing on the local impact. We dig deeper and work tirelessly to keep you informed.
Live in Wickerburg.
Live in Los Angeles.
In Cleveland. In Washington. In Louisville.
From Jerusalem.
Live in Philadelphia. From around the world to right here in Phoenix.
At Cronkite News, we report the facts and stick to the truth.
I'm Ted Simons, host and managing editor of Arizona Horizon. The 2018 election season has arrived. Join us for primary and general election debates. Right here, meet the candidates and hear their positions. Arizona Horizon, your source for what matters most this election season. Only on Arizona PBS.
When you visit, say, the Grand Canyon, roads, bridges, and water pipelines are just a few of the things needed to make sure your visit is pleasant. And sometimes they need repairs. As Cronkite News reporter Jordan Evans reports, U.S. Secretary of Interior Ryan Zinke visited the park this weekend to see some of those things that need not to be fixed just here in Arizona, but in parks across the nation.
The Grand Canyon is one of the nation's most popular parks for tourism. From the scenic views to the lodging to the guided tours, the Grand Canyon generated about $900 million in economic benefits just in 2016. But now, national parks across the nation are needing about $12 billion for infrastructure and facilities.
With 330 million visitors to our park system, 7 million visitors here, our parks are being loved to death.
Secretary of Interior Ryan Zinke took a bus along the south rim of the Grand Canyon Saturday. He stopped to see some of the areas that need to be fixed. Those include historic cabins and a water treatment plant, as well as the Trans-Canyon Pipeline.
It's time for America to step up and let's rebuild our parks to make sure we have the same experience for the next generation.
Here at the Grand Canyon, this park needs about $330 million to fix maintenance that's been deferred. That's only a small part of the nearly $12 billion needed to repair all of the national parks.
Deferred maintenance is maintenance that hasn't happened to buildings, assets, roads, utilities that needs to be done, but because of various reasons, whether it's budget or time, hasn't happened, and it leaves buildings and assets in poor condition. The opportunity we have today is funding that may come our way and be able to raise the profile of that topic and fund those projects that need to be done.
That funding could come through competing plans in Congress, which would provide billions of dollars to the National Park Service to make repairs. National parks in Arizona alone need $531 million. California needs the most at $1.8 billion. So one way to help curb that demand is for the community to get involved.
I heard that number and I was shocked. I was like, wow, like this is why volunteers come. This is a perfect opportunity. We need volunteers to come out and do things like this and to help lower our backlog maintenance. And it's things like painting a building or fixing a fence, just little things like that that anyone can come out and do.
But volunteers are only part of the solution. Some projects need paid contractors and engineers. So one plan currently in the U.S. Senate would develop federal lands for all sources of energy. That has some people concerned about the negative environmental impacts and accusing Zinke
of supporting corporate interests.
Most of what he's done is undermining, public lands and being on the side of oil and, extractive industries. So I think, there needs to be more done to be protecting these lands and not to be selling them out for profit.
But Zinke disagrees. Money coming from renewable or non-renewable energy developed on federal lands would go a long way to taking care of long overdue maintenance projects.
The underlying proposition is this: if you're going to create wealth and energy on public lands, then I think you also have an obligation to fund our public lands in perpetuity.
And there is more than one proposal in Congress to address this multi-billion-dollar park backlog. The National Park Service also considered increasing entrance fees at the busiest parks, but the superintendent at the Grand Canyon says the park does not plan to charge more to visit.
Well, Jordan, it did seem like a beautiful weekend up at the Grand Canyon, though.
Yes, Jordan, so what can we expect from our weather this week?
So we are tracking some storms up in the high country right now. It was a very gorgeous weekend, of course, but as we can see on radar, there are a few storms around Flagstaff and Humphreys Peak up there, so definitely keep it slow on I-40 if you're heading out towards New Mexico or Nevada for that matter, of course. But those are the only showers I'm tracking out in the state right now. For the valley, it's just the dry air that we're going to be talking about for the rest of the week. As we can see, keep winds out of the west, which is where a lot of that dry air comes from, and that's where we're going to see no rain chances for at least the next 7 days here in the valley. And temperatures tonight will stay in the 90s all the way through 9 o'clock tonight, with 80s kicking in at about 10 o'clock tonight. And then for tomorrow, as we head down into Tucson, of course, we're going to see those storm chances we'll see sunshine, I should say, with 92 degrees in the afternoon, light winds out of the southeast at about 5 to 10 miles an hour, with lows starting out in the 60s tomorrow morning. And then here in the valley, we'll see 100 degrees tomorrow with 77 in the morning. So a bit of a cooler start, as I should say, than we had previously. And then up in the Flagstaff, we'll see 70 degrees with those storm chances, of course, in the afternoon. So triple digits staying in the valley for the next 7 days before more rain chances can come into next week. And extending that out, we'll see those 90s kick in heading into next week as well. In the Cronkite Weather Center, I'm Jordan Evans.
It's the type of injury that has the potential to end an athlete's season right on the spot.
Coming up on Cronkite News, how one Valley High School is making an effort to prevent injuries to the ACL.
I'm Matt Berry, ESPN Sports Center anchor and graduate of ASU's Walter Cronkite School of Journalism and Mass Communication. With its bachelor's and master's degrees in sports journalism, the Cronkite School is preparing the next generation of sports journalists to tell stories that matter, stories that excite, inspire, and inform. Cronkite immerses students in covering sports at all levels in one of the country's top sports markets. It's this hands-on experience under the guidance of award-winning sports media veterans that shape the top journalists of tomorrow.
The Arizona Cardinals are switching it up. Rookie quarterback Josh Rosen will be the new starting quarterback. Head coach Steve Wilkes announced his decision at a news conference today.
Being a rookie quarterback, having his first start, we want to make sure, again, that he's comfortable and being able to command the huddle, most importantly, run the offense efficiently. There's no favoritism. I want guys out there that's going to be out there making plays that's going to help us win football games, and that's the opportunity that you're given each week.
The move comes after Rosen took over for Sam Bradford in the final 4 minutes of last night's game against the Chicago Bears. The game ended in a tough loss for the Redbirds with a final score of 16-14. Cards fans were left questioning whether Rosen is ready, but Wilkes says he trusts his rookie's abilities. The decision will be put to the test soon enough. The Cardinals host the Seattle Seahawks at home Sunday.
Concussion research is at the forefront of football safety concerns. However, there is one injury as relevant as ever and seasons right on the spot. Reporter Anthony Totri found out what athletes can do to combat that injury.
I caught the ball, turned upfield, and my foot got stuck in, and I tried to plant while my foot was still stuck in the floor, and it just snapped.
Carter Wheat is one of many.
I knew right then and there.
A torn ACL ended Wheat's sophomore football season at Red Mountain. Now a senior, he says his knee is as strong as ever thanks to his high school's emphasis on keeping athletes healthy.
And after a hard battle on Friday nights, I'm telling you, we need to have all the injury prevention and stretching and to help us out ready to go for Monday.
Red Mountain High School is one high school taking ACL prevention to the next level, and they're doing so with a higher frequency of single leg lifts like this one. Red Mountain's weightlifting program utilizes a variety of dynamic lifts that replicate in-game action, whereas static lifts, which increase muscular strength and endurance, don't incorporate much movement.
So an ACL injury most often happens when an athlete plants the foot on the ground so the foot's fixed, and then there's a rotational force, with or without trauma.
BROPHY High School athletic trainer Chris White said the program has had multiple players tear their ACL this season, which backs up a 2013 study conducted by the Journal of Athletic Training that found boys were 4 times more likely to tear their ACL playing football than any other sport. The study also concluded that 71.2% of all boys' ACL tears recorded in the sample were due to football.
If you're playing high school and club at the same time, doing the same movements over and over again, there's a heightened risk of especially chronic overuse injuries. And the body breaks down, and that could potentially put you at higher risk of ACL injuries.
There may not be one way to guarantee an ACL injury doesn't occur, but White and Brando said stretching, lifting in a purposeful way, and understanding limits can boost an athlete's chances of staying on the field. In Phoenix, Anthony Totri, Cronkite News.
Knee injuries are the second most common injuries among high school football players, according to a 2016-17 study conducted by the Center for Injury Research and Policy.
Cronkite News is proud to be the news division of Arizona PBS. Here's what's coming up on Arizona Horizon and PBS NewsHour.
On the next Arizona Horizon, an hour-long clean elections debate featuring the candidates for governor. Hear from Republican incumbent Doug Ducey, Democratic challenger David Garcia, and Green Party candidate Angel Torres. That's on the next Arizona Horizon.
I'm Amna Navaz. On the next NewsHour, the latest in the controversial confirmation of Supreme Court nominee Brett Kavanaugh. That's Monday on the PBS NewsHour.
That's it for Cronkite News tonight. Thank you for joining us.
For top Arizona stories anytime, go to cronkitenews.azpbs.org.